Welcome back to another episode of Podcast Demastered, a place where we celebrate our love for all things nerdy. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Wade.
On today's episode, we will be demastering Fighting to Belong Volume 1. And this is Megan, so we are celebrating Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And this was kind of a random graphic novel I had found. It really has a wealth of information. It's part of a series. There's going to be 3 volumes. The third one actually hasn't come out yet at time of release of this episode. But they kind of just do a pretty good deep dive. It's a good learning tool for students to just kind of learn about Asian American history.
Yeah. It is really interesting. It's very simple. Like, they have a premise where basically you have a cast. You have this little group of 7th graders who are kind of charged to create this presentation on Asian American history. And one of the girls has a neighbor who works at like a museum. And where there's an exhibit on Asian American history. So they get together, they go see him at the museum. And I thought this was so funny. He's majoring, what was it, in
yes.
history, I think it was,
Yes.
but also like thaumaturgy.
Yeah.
I love how they use the word like thaumaturgy, like illusions and thaumaturgy.
Yes.
And it's like, bruh, okay, get it. Like,
Yeah.
pop off on that one. But yeah, so he's like, yeah, I'm going to give you a VIP tour through like this exhibit, except we're actually going to go back in time because magic.
Yes.
Which is like, all right, cool.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like a magic school bus type vibe or something. Like, let's
very
go
much
on a
so.
quirky field trip and stuff. And
Yeah.
I think, like, it's a little silly of a premise, but I think it really works really well because, you know, not everybody enjoys learning about history, and sometimes people can find it boring. And so you can have some very relatable characters in this about, like, why do we care about this? This is another project again. Like, this has no effect on my life. And you realize, oh, wait, some of these kids get really worked up about these parts in history because, like, their relatives might have been involved in this or something. And they're just like, these injustices are not cool. But it's really interesting because they did a really good job of, like, diving into these parts of history. I mean, me personally, there was a lot of stuff in this that was very new to me that I was not familiar with ever hearing about.
No, I learned a few new things too, and I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like big events, like, well, of course that, yeah, I remember that. And sometimes it's smaller scale things,
Yeah.
like something that happened like in a specific town that didn't get coverage at that time. You know, it's little bitty things, but you know, I love how every story that they're kind of covering, at least one of the kids has a connection to it based off of their, like, specifically, oh, my grandpa, you know, was there. He's talked about that before. Or it's just like my ancestry. Like, oh yeah, I share a race with this group of people. And, you know, and we don't get a lot of this, but one of the kids in the group, he's white, Joe, love Joe. But when they are talking about, like, the railroad in California through the West, they connect even his ancestry, because a lot of Irish Americans, or Irish immigrants, I suppose, were also tied into a lot of that. And they do briefly touch on the injustice of the Irish immigrant people, which he is an ancestor of. So they're like, even white people, you have a role that's not like the villain, you know?
Yes.
Like, everybody matters. Everybody matters because everybody was on the same playing field as far as, like, who is being mistreated, you know? I love that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think this graphic novel does a really good job of just, you know, like, going through each part of history and just being like, this group of immigrants did this and this one did this, and, you know, it's just stating those facts. And unfortunately, because we do see that in a lot of history with a lot of immigrants, there is a lot of course, racism, a lot of violence and hatred. And you also see at the very start of this book, because this volume covers from the 1700s through like the 1800s, and it's really fascinating because it starts with the Manila Men, which was something that I don't think I fully knew anything about, but I began to realize, like, you know, Filipino people had been here a very long time, and they were originally had been forced to come here as slaves, and then they escaped and built their own area, established in the South. And a lot of things that we attribute to some of the Southern culture is also because of Filipinos. And it's really cool to see that. And I was actually kind of impressed with how variety they covered, because it covers all the way up through like stuff in Hawaii. And I only learned about some of the stuff in Hawaii recently when I got a chance to visit there, because I went to some of the historical sites. But that's, not typically what you hear about when you hear about Hawaii.
Yeah.
Hawaii is just, oh, the fun vacation destination. You're like, no, Hawaii has a history. There's a history before it was a state, before it was all these things.
And I didn't realize that Hawaii wasn't a state until like almost like 1960. Like it had been kind of claimed, it's kind of like how like Puerto Rico is today. But it didn't become the 50th state was not a state until almost 1960. Like when Pearl Harbor happened was not a state.
Yeah.
Like that's wild. I didn't realize that it was just so late, I suppose, in our history, like in the 1900s specifically, that it became a full state.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because this graphic novel also covers that like the people living in Hawaii, you had like the actual native Hawaiians and the people that like the Americans tried to claim and take over their land, and people were just ruling, just being like, we were here, we're just trying to live and join together, and then forcing people. And then you also have the era too of essentially plantations, all these areas where they had a bunch of labor forces and Asians that came, that immigrated there and worked there, and you have this very diverse, very interesting conglomerate of people in Hawaii. And then also it's just, yeah, statehood comes essentially.
Yeah.
But because they do have to weave the story in about these kids going on a field trip and stuff, and it leaves you with a cliffhanger at the end to kind of tease, and you're like, what? Yeah,
I was like, wow, what a way to end that. All right.
I know, it was so abrupt. You've been missing, you're fired. I was like, what?
Sorry, kids, no more magic mystery tour for you.
Yeah. I know. And the way it ends it there, but I think it's because it also helps, like, you're really like, you get into it. And this is also a graphic novel. I think it's very easy to want to read multiple times, just because there is so much history in these so few pages. And it's kind of cool too, because this book was made for children to learn about Asian American history. And so like the second half of the book, it has a bunch of like resources and curriculum guides and even more you can find out, because this was a partnership essentially with the idea of the Asian American Education Project wanting to create some way for kids to learn about Asian American history. Because that's the thing, it's trying to come up with creative ways for people, not even just kids, but anybody to learn about history. What's a fun way we can get engagement or get people to even want to know about things that they may not have necessarily learned? And I like when there's creative projects like this. I think graphic novels are really fun, and I love that they are a resource to be used to learn for anybody, because I think it also changes the idea of what people think a graphic novel is, or even like a comic book. It's kind of like, oh, it's just one of those things, superhero stories. I'm like, no, there's so much more that could be done in a medium like this.
When we've gotten to the point where like whole graphic novels are being banned, as far as like, this is information that like kids shouldn't like learn, like oh my gosh, what's it called? Mouse?
Yes, that's what I was thinking
Mouse.
of, yeah.
Yeah, like it's wild. It's wild. I mean, that whole subject, just like the idea of banning a book anyway, banning passing on information. That whole concept is just like annoying to me. But I'm a teacher. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and that's why like, and graphic novels are such a powerful way, because you are reading about the information, but you also like see things with it. It's a visual experience as well, and I think it can do so many great ways of really grounding reality, really
absolutely
making stories real. And by doing something like this where the kids can relate to these parts of history, because they're like, well, I'm personally affected by this, it could be like history is real. And I think
history is indeed real. And sometimes it's not comfortable.
Yes.
And that's okay. Like, we don't grow as people without dipping our toes into the uncomfortable. And learning about uncomfortable history does not villainize people, and it does not radicalize people. It's just, we know, we can sympathize, we empathize, and so we can better plan for the future. I mean, it's truly that simple.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day of my life. This is me I have to deal with this all the dang time.
Yeah. But I think we probably will cover the other volumes at some point, I think, in the future. I think this was a really cool way of capturing such a large chunk of history, and I think it's something cool to highlight. Another fun thing that might be a loose tease for a future episode too is that one of the writers of this graphic novel is Amy Chu. She has worked on a ton of projects. She is a Marvel writer. She's worked on TV shows, movies, and stuff like that. One of her most recent-ish series is an Emma Frost one that she wrote. I think it's the one that came out in 2025. So we may or may not be looking at that series for a future episode. You know,
later on in the year, indeed.
Yes. Listeners, that's a tease. I don't know if you know, if you're fans of Emma Frost, you'll have to listen to our X-Men episodes for that.
we're kind of X-Men people over here.
Yes, kind of X-Men people. But also just in general, kind of people who love to learn new things, check out graphic novels, movies, things that people may not give a lot of attention to, because there's a lot out there, a lot to check out. But listeners, I think that'll do it for this episode.
And that's it for another episode of Podcast Demastered.
If you enjoyed hanging out with us today, don't forget to follow and subscribe, leave us a review, and tell a friend.
If you have an episode idea, send us an email at demasteredpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook at Pod Demastered.
Thanks for listening, and tune in for the next time we demaster our favorite things on Podcast Demastered.